press. Mr. Card, as you heard, said that President Bush would be making a statement later today. Senator Kerry tentatively is scheduled to speak at 10 a.m. this morning. There may not be a final decision there, but there are lots of final decisions in the House and in the Senate and in the governor's races. We're going to focus on that. First, let's show you what the new makeup of the United States House of Representatives, or rather the United States Senate is. The United States Senate was 51 to 48 with one independent. It's currently 2 up for the Republicans, 53-44. Then the next one is the House of Representatives. The current is 229 Republicans to 205 with one independent. Already called, again, these are only the ones truly called by the Associated Press, 228 Republicans, 199 Democrats, and one independent. And for the governor's races, currently there are 28 Republicans and I'm sorry, I'll have to see that one more time because 28 Republicans, thank you, and 22 Democrats. The new tally is 28 Republicans and 21 Democrats. We're still waiting on the Washington state numbers to come out. Our goal this morning is to hear from you. Phone lines are open, 202-737-0002 if you voted for Senator Kerry, 202-628-0205 if you voted for President Bush, and 202-628-0184 if you voted for others. There are some results that you might be interested in, some interesting results from overnight. Pedro Echeverria has those results. We're going to start out in the Senate.
Looking at South Dakota, it's Republican John Thune defeating Senate Minority Leader Tom Daschle with 50.9% of the vote, 99% of precincts coming in. In Alaska, the Associated Press has not called this race, but Lisa Murkowski leads with 49.5% of the vote over her challenger Tony Knowles, the former representative. In Florida, the Associated Press not calling this race either, with Mel Martinez leading over Betty Castor with a 49% lead. Looking at Kentucky, Jim Bunning, the Republican, the incumbent, wins with just over 50% of the vote and 99% of precincts coming in. And then looking at Colorado, the Democrat, Ken Salazar, defeats Pete Coors with 50% of the vote.
The defeat of Tom Daschle in South Dakota means that there will be a new minority leader of the United States Senate because the Democrats will still be in the minority there. Question about who that will be. Some are talking about already Senator Christopher Dodd. You might remember that he lost in the race for minority leader to Senator Daschle by one vote, and he won his election yesterday, re-election yesterday in the Senate. Marietta, California, Kerry supporter, good morning.
Good morning, Connie. I was just calling to let everybody know that if President Bush does end up becoming reelected, which it looks like chances are that he is, it's going to be a sad day for America. All this will do is fuel more recruits for the terrorist regime, and the Republicans won't have anybody to blame but themselves if anything happens while he's in office. Thank you.
Redding, California.
Hi. In regards for President Bush, I did vote for President Bush. I think that he's done a good job for our country. I'm looking at some of the returns, and I see that in Ohio, President Bush is up by 134,000 votes. Some people are kind of comparing this election to Florida in 2000, and this is nothing like Florida. This is a solid mandate for Bush. He's got a 3.5 million popular vote, which he didn't have in 4,000. And I think that the thing that should happen here is that Senator Kerry should come out soon and graciously concede the election to President Bush so we can begin to kind of heal the wounds in the country and get behind the president so the job that he has faced for the next 4 years, he can get done with the majority of Americans supporting him and seeing that job is done.
Baltimore, Maryland. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I think it just may be the same things that happened in 2000. It's very sad to see that, but already before the election started, there had been people complaining that they were not being allowed to vote. They were being taken off of the voting registration. I was part of a recruitment drive, so to speak, registration drive at my school. I'm a college student. And there were students complaining that they had not received their voter's card. They had registered to vote and had not received their voter's card. And I also think that the scare tactics that was used by the president right before the election, I don't think it was coincidence that that videotape of Osama bin Laden came right before Election Day. I think that was a scare tactic used for Bush.
Thanks, Baltimore. By the way, as you probably know, your Senator Mikulski, won overwhelmingly 65% of the vote yesterday. Now a look at the House incumbents who lost.
In the 8th District of Illinois, it is the Democrat Melissa Bean who defeated the incumbent Philip Crane with a 51% of the vote coming in and 99% of precincts reporting. Looking at several in Texas, and you remember the redistricting story coming out of Texas, Louis Gohmert, the Republican, with 151,000 votes, just a little bit over that, and 61% of the vote totals. Ted Poe out of the 2nd District in Texas, defeating Nick Lampson with 55% of the vote. Looking at the 19th District in Newberger with 136,000 votes, 58% of the vote there with 100% of precincts reporting. And Pete Sessions defeating Martin Frost in the 32nd District of Texas with 54% of the vote.
Again, the new numbers for the United States House of Representatives right now, 228 for Republicans, 199 for Democrats, and 1 independent. Next call's from St. Louis. Good morning, St. Louis.
Good morning. How are you today?
Fine, thanks. I see President Bush won there pretty handily, 53-46.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I wonder if Kerry had the lead that Bush does currently, as far as the results that are in. If the media would be so reluctant to not C-SPAN so much, but the rest of the media elite to report the results as Kerry, I think they would have called it hours and hours ago, and just wanted to point that out. It seems like we need to hear a concession speech from Kerry and get on with this thing.
Thank you. Missouri also had a governor's race and a Senate race. In the governor's race, Governor Blunt, the new governor, he had won with 51%, and Kit Bond won in the Senate race for re-election 53-46. Los Angeles, good morning.
Good morning. That last caller, I'm just curious if, in fact, the tables were turned and it was, Bush who was waiting on provisional ballots to decide Ohio, if Fox News Channel would have called it for him while everyone else is sitting back going, this is not official, this is not done yet, so we're just not going to call it, while Fox went ahead and called it. So when they want to talk about elite media, they can forget about that.
What do you think the senator should do?
I think we just need to be patient and wait. Obviously we're still waiting on votes. Ohio is the only one that seems to really matter. But it's just more disturbing to again look at that map and see that the Electoral College has allowed this country to be hijacked by ignorance, through the rest of that part of the country. You look at the major population centers and the places where people are better educated and have some idea what's going on in this country and aren't just being led by Bibles and homophobia and bigotry, and they all voted for the other guy.
Your stem cell research referendum passed?
It did, yes.
And so do you know how much money that's going to give to that?
I don't know specifically how much money, no.
Okay, thank you. Jonesboro, Tennessee is next. Good morning, Jonesboro.
Yes, I just want to make a comment on what that guy from California said. As far as, being hijacked in the United States, I don't believe that. I don't think that there's any possible way that California should have 55 votes. I'm totally against stem cell. He was talking about the Bible people voting for the other guy. This country needs a moral president. And I really do believe that George Bush is the man for the job. And I think as far as being hijacked, if you look at the map, he's got the majority of the whole United States. I think they've got the electoral votes. The way they have done that is totally wrong. The
Thanks, Tennessee. We'll leave it at that. Appreciate it. In Tennessee, by the way, they went for President Bush 57-43. There was no governor or Senate race there. Let's go to Silver Spring, Maryland. Hello, Silver Spring.
Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Good.
Yes, I have 2 points. First, I think it's so interesting that morality should even be an issue when President Bush has problems with his honesty, for one. And number 2, just a question, I don't know if you could answer it or not. I find it a bit curious that we are able to proclaim who the president is or have electoral ballots already counted when we have outstanding absentee ballots to still count and provisional ballots to still count. I don't know if you could answer that question.
I think that the assumptions are made, the predictions are made by Associated Press or whoever by knowing the number of ballots there are, of those provisional ballots and of those absentee ballots, and what is the distance from between the two candidates. But thank you for your call. Let's go next to, actually what we're going to do now is take a look at the governor's races. These are the governors whose parties switched.
Winning over Joe Kernan with 53% of the vote and 99% of precincts coming in. Moving to Missouri, Matt Blunt, the Republican, wins over Claire McCaskill, and he received 50%, just a little over 50% of the vote. In Montana, Brian Schweitzer, the Democrat, with 183,000 plus votes, wins with 51% of the vote. And looking at New Hampshire, Governor Benson was the governor, now has been replaced by John Lynch, the incoming Democrat, who won with 51% of the vote. In Washington State, Dino Rossi, the Republican, this contest not officially officiated by the Associated Press. It is a tie between him and Christine Gregoire with 48.9% of votes coming in each.
They are, however, they did go for Senator Kerry in Washington State. Kerry took 52% over Bush's 46%. And Patty Murray won her seat in the Senate in Washington State, also beating George Nethercutt 55% to 43%. Next is Alexandria, Virginia. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing very good, thank you.
Did you stay up late last night?
Yes, I did, and I'm glad I did. It was well worth it. Anyway, my comment is, yes, I did vote for Bush as a Hispanic voter myself for the first time, and I think that was the difference right there for George W. Bush. The Hispanic vote might have won it for him, because at least we knew where he stand, and as far as morals is concerned, that we needed in this country badly.
Let me tell you about a situation that I encountered at my polling place yesterday morning, where a Hispanic woman in front of me came to vote, and she hadn't registered. And she, of course, she was not allowed to vote because she hadn't registered. Did you see a lack of communication in getting the Hispanic vote out in Virginia?
No, not really. It was pretty easy, actually. Yesterday, there were some situations, like you mentioned. There were some people that were not registered, but they were allowed to fill the form, and they went right in and voted. So that was not an issue at all. But back to what I was saying, about the morals, the gay marriages and the abortion, stuff like that Kerry supported, that might have cost him the presidency.
Thanks. Alexandria, Virginia. No senator-governor's race in Virginia. Bush took Virginia 54-46. Next is Ashdown, Arkansas. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking. Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Welcome.
And, I love C-SPAN, and I just wanted to say I did support Senator Kerry, and it does look like President Bush is going to win, even with the Ohio thing. But the country is still polarized. I mean, I live in a red state, Arkansas, and Senator Kerry still carried a red state even after Fox News, right-wing radio, the pamphlets that went out in West Virginia and Arkansas that said Democrats were going to ban the Bible, the churches getting in on it. He still carried 45% of Arkansas. So, as far as everybody pulling together, I still think that the contentious factors are still out there, and Bush is going to face a very, very difficult White House, and I just hope that our country can pull more together than we have been. Thank you.
Thank you. In Arkansas, you have, one Republican, right? Correct, Congressman?
Yes.
And it looks like he, Mr. Boozman, and he won 59 to 38. But besides that, the rest of your congressmen, House members are Democrats.
Right. And Blanche Lincoln did win hers against Jim Holt.
Yes, 56-44. Actually, that's not all that much different than the percentage numbers of 54-45 that that came in for the presidency.
Yeah, so this is a very, very red state. So I'm not thinking the Democrats are just going to lay down and die if we don't get the White House.
Okay, thanks very much. We go to Plymouth, Massachusetts next. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ken, go ahead, please.
I'm a Bush supporter in Kerry country,
Mm-hmm.
and Bush got 1 million votes here in Massachusetts. I'm just wishing we could, both the candidates and the voters on the side that won and the side that lost, could do it with dignity and class. Unlike last time, Bush is ahead by 3.5 million in the popular vote. Both houses of Congress appear to be going or staying Republican. The minority leader lost. I think if a candidate has an axe to grind, it's because he and his supporters did not have such a strong mandate that they won by 52, 55, 57%. When it comes down to 50-50, nobody has a mandate. And everyone needs to pull together to make things work. And I don't think the backbiting and the trash talking is helpful. I think what you need in a close race like this is to pull together and support everyone in a representative position.
Newburgh, Indiana, Kerry supporter.
Yes, ma'am. I was off for a surgery last week, and changing channels and going through during the day watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching all of the Christian ministers, the Christian coalition, the Falwell and Pat Robertson group. Every single one of them threatened all their folks with eternal damnation if they didn't go out and get a vote for God, including like abortion and anti-marriage, that kind of stuff. And what it does, once I see how they turned out their vote, is it scares the devil out of me. I don't know how we're any different than Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan or any of that if we're controlled by these religious groups.
Indiana,
and people should think, just one more thing.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not going to cut you off.
People should really think about why people, ordinary working Americans, would stand in line 6 hours to vote without something as important to them as their religion.
I would love to ask you a question about your state, because President Bush beat Senator Kerry there 60% to 39.
Uh-huh.
So how does Evan Bayh, a Democrat, beat Mr. Scott 62 to 37? It's just a flip.
Evan Bayh's been around a long time, and everybody likes him. But I still think this is really something maybe you should look into. Apparently, we don't have newspaper reporters in this country that watch any of the religious programming. So somebody please check into it.
Okay, thanks. Here's a look at the presidential race in some key battleground states.
Looking at Ohio, the president received 51% of the vote, with about just a little over 136,000 votes separating him and Senator Kerry. Going to New Mexico, the president also winning with 50% of the vote compared to John Kerry's 48%. When we look at Iowa, president taking the vote there with 741,000 votes, just over that, and that's a little over 50% of the vote in Iowa. In Nevada, the president again with 50.7% of the vote compared to John Kerry and 48%. Looking at New Hampshire, Senator Kerry wins with 50% of the vote, just over 50% of the vote in New Hampshire, and that's 95% of precincts reporting, and that is it.
There's the Washington Post this morning. I want to show you. There's a home edition that comes out, and then there's the final edition. So you can see two different editions of the Post this morning. Here was the headline earlier in the morning or overnight. Presidential race is too close to call. Ohio looms large. Republicans appear likely to retain control of House and Senate. And then later, they changed it to this headline. Bush takes electoral lead. Outcome could hinge on Ohio. Next, we go to Maryville, Indiana. Good morning, Maryville.
Good morning. I think a lot of the comments that are coming in are referring to the 2000 vote. They're forgetting that Bush is way ahead in the popular vote right now. Also, if the situation were reversed, as some of the other callers have stated this morning, I believe, based on what I've heard from the media, also referring to the lady's comment from Indiana also about the ministers and the religious leaders stating that they believe that we should vote for only President Bush, or else we were damned to hell. If it were Senator Kerry, then I believe that the media would be cheering the fact that he took the seat. He took the White House. I'm the opposite opinion.
Okay.
I really can't say that enough.
Okay, thanks. Maryville, can you help us with that issue of how Senator Bai wins?
Yes, I firmly believe that he's the son of former Birch Bai, now deceased. He's a very good-looking man. Everybody does like him. I am a true Republican, and I don't have any problem with him whatsoever.
Okay. Did you vote for him?
No, I did not.
You did not. Okay. No. Ukiah, California, you're next. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? Are you
Fine,
awake?
Thanks. Am I awake? Oh, sure. I got some sleep. The rest of the staff didn't.
Oh, okay. That's good. Voting here was very good. Waited 5 minutes. All my neighbors were there. I am distraught over the results and stunned that people see this president as a moral person. I would suggest that everybody join me in wearing a black armband until it's finally settled. I'm appalled that the ministers are allowed to tell their congregations how to vote, and I really think their tax status should be investigated. And I'm not generally that way. I'm just shocked at the absolute failure of people to put morality ahead of the safety of the country. And I thank you guys for a spectacular job through the whole mess. It's been great.
Thanks. Well, we can go to that state that is so contentious today, Ohio, Lima, Ohio.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. I completely disagree with the last caller. I believe our country is going to be in a sad state if we don't get more morality in the government. I've always voted Democrat, and just listened to the two candidates this year. I did vote for President Bush.
You did. Mm-hmm. Have you talked to any of your colleagues or your friends or the people who were there yesterday, how they feel about this turnout and the controversy in Ohio?
Well, yes, actually, I was part of the the controversy, I guess. I received the paper that they were challenging my right to vote. Mm-hmm. It was a mistake with the zip codes and the addresses, as a matter of fact. But, yeah, people I've talked to that have always voted staunch Democrat, a lot of them were voting for President Bush because they didn't believe that Senator Kerry could be trusted. Mm-hmm. Just from the his past record, he states one thing, and then when the truth comes out, he actually has not voted the way he says he has on taxes and things like that.
Okay, thanks very much. As we said earlier, there are the current makeup of the United States House of Representatives is going to be 228 to 199 with one undecided. Now that is with the races that are currently decided. So it's important right now to take a look at those races that aren't decided yet, so you know what is still out there.
At Georgia's 12th district, it's John Barrow, the Democrat, leading over Max Burns with 51.7% of the vote. Heading to Indiana, Mike Sedrell, the Republican, with 49.3% of the vote, leading over incumbent Barron Hill, the Democrat. Looking to New York State in the 27th District, Brian Higgins, the Democrat, leads over Nancy Naples with 50% of the vote. In Pennsylvania, in the 6th District, Jim Gerlach is the incumbent. He leads currently with just over 50% of the vote over Lois Murphy. Dave Reichert in Washington with 51.7% of the vote, leading over Dave Ross and Spencer Garrett.
Let's go next to Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes, thank you. This religious aspect about abortion and morals, George Bush has rolling back 30 years of environmental policy, and he's contaminating the land, and especially in Iraq they used uranium weapons and the whole place is radioactive. And the women in Iraq and Afghanistan are afraid to get pregnant now because they're having severely deformed babies. And also our own troops, the Life magazine showed American GI babies with no arms, born with no arms and no legs. And Bush will cause more abortions. Because of his policies, there'll be more babies aborted because they're horribly deformed. And this idea that he is pro-life is absurd. And more than that, I think the worst thing he has done is provoked a holy war by contaminating the blood of the people of Iraq.
Now, caller, let me ask you a question. If President Bush is named the winner today or 10 days from now, are you going to accept him as your president?
I think he should be impeached, and I've heard that a person named Hilton, I don't think it's associated with the Hilton Hotel, but they're already planning, because of war crimes that Bush has perpetrated, that I think things will end up him being impeached.
Okay, thank you. I want to show you another newspaper and how it's changed overnight. USA Today, which, as you know, is distributed by satellite all across the country. This was the headline as of in an overnight edition, probably one of the largest headlines I've ever seen on USA Today. But later they brought in this one: Bush nears victory, but Ohio count is in dispute. That's what USA Today looks like. Also, we want to mention, I got a note that clarified a little bit about the Bys. The father, Birch By, actually is not deceased. Apparently he lives here in the Washington area. So we wanted to mention that so that if in case he's watching, he knows that we didn't let that go. Thanks. Next, we go to Woodstock, Georgia.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm pleased to be on the show this morning.
Welcome.
I listened to a couple callers, and I guess I had some concerns. I'm an African-American voter, and I did vote for Bush.
Mm-hmm.
And there's issues of morality, there's an issue of dividing the country that I heard from an earlier caller, and I just have to think that what you said was key. People need to, whoever is put into office, we need to accept that president, and we need to stand behind him. We're all still polarized, but that's an issue of choice. And morality obviously is something that's getting Democrats to come across the line to the Republican side because they see this president, not that he's perfect, but they see him as a person that stands for morality, and morality is the key to safety in this country as well as the war on terror.
Okay, thanks very much. We go next to Oklahoma, and as we go to Noble, Oklahoma, we'll let you take a look at some of the Senate results. And, of course, you had a big Senate race in Oklahoma.
Yes, we sure did.
What was the final outcome there?
Well, the Democrat on, to the Senate won.
No, I think actually the Republican won in the Senate.
I mean the Republican.
Yeah, Mr. Coburn is going to be going to the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
He was formerly in the House of Representatives and beat Mr. Carson 53-41.
Uh-huh.
Was that a pretty contentious race there?
It was, but it was like the national, and there was a lot of blah, blah, blah,
What would you like to say to us this morning?
What I'd like to say is that I'm glad it's over. I've voted 50 years, and I have never, ever seen it so much hate. And I know it started back when Gingrich got in after Clinton, And it went on and on and on, you know, and it's just continued. And it's so sad because we have a wonderful country. But I was kind of sad if Bush gets it because he, like he lands on the aircraft carrier like he's a Top Gun and bring it on. They brought it on. Everyone says, well, there's not as much. We haven't had anything in this country, but look at all the things that's going on and on and on, and all the attacks and stuff that it's just ridiculous.
Oklahoma, thanks for the call. We're going to go back to Indiana again. Marion, Indiana.
Yes, I'd like to say to all these Democrats out here that's calling in and crying, and especially to the guy from L.A. that said us out here in these red states are uneducated. Oh, I got news for you, buddy. A lot of us are educated, and we feel that way about you Democrats. So I know a lot of Democrats that they might go watch a Michael Moore movie and, you know, and come home with a conclusion and, you know, think that's the truth and stuff like that. So we feel that way about you. I mean, we feel like you guys are weak on security. You know, you had no good candidate in the whole primary season. You come up with John Kerry, and we defeat him, and now you're crying about it. So it's your fault. You guys can all move to France where you belong. You know, just join up with Al-Qaeda, because that's how we feel about you guys, too. So thanks a lot.
And that's how the presidential vote came out in Indiana, 60% for George W. Bush and 39% for John Kerry. Now it's time to go over to the hotline. We're going to get some information about those ballot initiatives. There were a lot of them, and Vaughn Ververs is with us this morning. Good morning, Vaughn.
Good morning, Connie, or at least I think it's morning. I'm not sure. It's been a long night. Yeah, there were a lot of ballot initiatives. Some we're more interested in than others. I'll give you a rundown of the ones that we were watching most carefully. Of course, there were 11 states that had some form of an amendment or a ballot initiative that would ban gay marriage in those states. It passed overwhelmingly in every single state. The highest the opposition got was in Oregon, but it still passed there, 56 to 43% of the vote. The highest it got was in Mississippi, where 86% of the voters voted yes to ban gay marriage. That was an overwhelmingly popular amendment. We might see more of those in the coming years in the rest of the states. The other one that everyone was interested in kind of waned in the closing days here. We saw this failing in the polls, but that Colorado amendment that would have split the state's electoral votes failed by 66%. Really, both parties had come out against that and said that this would hurt Colorado's influence in the presidential election process by taking it off the battleground map and causing candidates not to spend any time there. Voters heard that message from both parties, and they defeated that. In Alaska, however, where it looks as though Lisa Murkowski might eke out a win, that race still hasn't been called, but the amendment that they had on the ballot to prohibit a newly elected governor or a senator-elected governor from appointing his own replacement, as Frank Murkowski did with Lisa Murkowski, that amendment passed with 55% of the vote, so that was an issue in the state of Alaska. Also in Alaska, its I think, third consecutive bid to legalize marijuana failed by 56%. Montana, however, did pass an initiative for medical marijuana. That passed with 62% of the vote. Very specific language in that bill, however. California became the first state, I believe, to pass a stem cell research, funding the state-funded research of stem cell, embryonic stem cell research. And finally, a couple of real fun ones that we liked. In South Carolina, there was an initiative on the ballot to stop the sale of those mini liquor bottles that bars could only sell, those mini liquor bottles. They left it up. This amendment would leave it up to the state legislature to set the size of bottles. That one passed with almost 60% of the vote. And finally, in Nevada, they had an amendment on the ballot that would change the use of the word idiot or insane person to a person who has been adjudicated mentally incompetent unless restored to legal capacity, and referring to the ability to cast a vote. That was one of the ones that we like, so you can no longer call them idiots in the state of Nevada.
Vaughn, unless I wasn't listening correctly, I didn't hear you talk about the lottery.
The lottery.
Oklahoma.
I haven't been. We didn't have that one on our list to follow, Connie.
Depends upon what your interests are, right? Oklahoma did pass a a vote for the lottery, making only 9 states now do not allow the lottery.
Well, that could be a trend. I know a lot of people are upset, but a lot of these states are also addicted to that lottery money, too.
Let me ask you, since we've been on the air in the past 35 minutes, whether there have been any news out of Ohio or anything that you can update us on.
You know what? Everything seems to be very much stalled. We're waiting for a real accurate count out of Ohio in terms of how many of those provisional ballots are left to be counted there. The numbers have been fluctuating wildly all night long. We heard as high as 400,000. We've heard as low as 100,000. The most commonly cited figure seems to be about 150,000, which would make it a really uphill fight for the Kerry campaign.
Are we still hearing tentatively that Senator Kerry might come out at 10 o'clock?
We're hearing that they're going to be meeting at 10 o'clock. The campaign brain trust is supposed to sort of take the lid off of their press lockdown about that time. We may get some word out of there, not sure yet on any kind of decisions. Everything seems to be in balance. One of the funny things is the networks who have called this race so far, who have called Ohio, have yet to call Nevada, to my knowledge, which would put the president over the top. The networks who have called Nevada have yet to call Ohio. None of these networks seem to want to be the first one to come out and call the presidency just yet.
And finally, there's word that Senator Daschle might be coming out this morning around 11:30.
Well, we've already seen Senator Thune, or I guess he would call himself Senator-elect Thune, a big defeat there for the Democrats, and I'm sure we'll be interested to see what Senator Daschle has to say.
There's Senator Thune from last night on the screen. We're going to take you next to Paris, Texas. Hello.
Yes, this is, I'm from Paris, Texas, and I was calling because my son has been in service for almost 6 years. He only signed up for 4, and that's the reason why I voted for Kerry. And another thing, when I went to vote, most on the black side of Paris is minorities, and we had to go to the police station to vote. They had changed the precincts where we go and vote. And I didn't think that was right at all, so I didn't, and I also wanted to say that I just hate that Kerry, don't look like Kerry is going to win, because Bush is not really thinking about the soldiers, because my son have been in there for 4 years, over 4 years. He have did his 4 years, and come July the 21st will be 6 years.
Paris, Texas, thank you. 34 Senate seats were up for grabs yesterday across the country. As we continue taking our calls, we're going to show you on the screen the results from some of those, beginning alphabetically with Alabama. We go to Chico, California next on our phone calls. Hello, Chico.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond. I'm a devout Christian. I live in California, obviously, but I grew up in Texas, and I think it's really sad that just because people have a difference of opinion, there was the gentleman in L.A. and then the other gentleman that responded to him. I don't remember where he was from, but I mean, referring to each other as being uneducated, it's just sad that the world, the society we're living in today has degraded so far from where it came, and nobody seems to remember the fact that the reason we're in this country is because the Protestant Christians wanted to have their beliefs. And no matter where you stand on that, I mean, I'm glad Bush is going to win the election. At least that's the way it looks right now. And I just think it's horrible that we're sitting here just because we have differences of opinions. We're going to start bad-mouthing people that we don't even know. The gentleman in California has no idea about people in the South, and a lot of the people in the South have no idea about people out in California. I just wanted to say that I think it's really sad that people are going to that extreme.
Thank you. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Good morning, Pittsburgh.
Oh, yes. I'd just like to say that I don't really think religion and politics should be on the same level. And as far as going over Iraq where he's at, I feel there's other countries such as Africa and South America that have far worse crimes going on to their people than Iraq did. When you have African women that have their womanhood taken off them before they know what it is, that's not bad. And how about South America, where they kill children systematically because they have no place to put them? That's not bad. Other countries have it too, worse than Iraq. The only thing is they don't have oil.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The final numbers in Pennsylvania, by the way, 51-49, Senator Kerry over President Bush. And in the Senate race there, Senator Specter won re-election with 53% of the vote. Next, we go to Wintersport, Maine. Good morning, Maine.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you this
Good.
morning? My state did actually vote for Senator Kerry. I, however, did vote for President Bush. And being the parent of somebody who is in the military, I strongly believe in what he's doing. I feel that our soldiers are much safer with Bush in the White House and continuing to be there. And morality, everybody needs to look around. Morality comes from your own home. It's got nothing to do with the presidency. It's how you are and how you raise your children. And it doesn't matter who's president, how you behave.
Can I ask you about your congressional race? I noticed that all Democrats will be representing Maine again. If you voted for President Bush, did you vote for a Democrat or Republican on your congressional side?
I absolutely voted Republican line.
Okay, thanks. And the final vote percentages for the presidential race in Maine, 53-45. Next, for Senator Kerry. Next, we go to Temple Hills, Maryland. Good morning.
Good morning. I like to say, well, first of all, I've been watching since 5 o'clock this morning, and then I never got a number, but that's a whole other story. I wanted to say, I'm a first-time voter. I'm 23 years old. I heard the country, like, totally dogging Bush. Like, Bush is, like, just the worst thing in the whole entire world. He makes the worst decisions. And then I watched the votes come in last night. Like, I was up all night watching it. I don't understand how Bush won all those states. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. So I feel like, I mean, I know it's a horrible thing to say, but I feel like it's rigged. I mean, last year it was obviously rigged. And this year we have computers doing the voting. And you got, like, gurus, like, you know, people who are really smart with computers who can, like rig computers where it won't even look like it's rigged. Like, you vote for Kerry, and then it'll just tally Bush. You know what I'm saying? And I know that's, like, not fair for people who are, like, voting for Bush, but I honestly believe that. You know what I mean? And as far as the religion aspect, the devil knows more about the Bible than Christians. I mean, that's been proven in church over and over again. You know what I'm saying? So as far as Bush being so morally religious, of course he knows about the Bible. He has to know, you know, where to fight.
Thank you. For people who follow this in the House and the Senate, let's take a little look at the House committees. There were no chairmen of House committees that were defeated yesterday. So right now, the chairmanships, unless they are term limited, which is possible, would be probably staying the same. However, there are two minority leaders of committees, Democrats, who lost, both from Texas. Charlie Stenholm was the ranking person on the House Agriculture Committee, and Martin Frost was the ranking person on the House Rules Committee. Now, if many times the next person in seniority would be picked up, that's not necessarily so. It doesn't have to happen. But if that were to happen, Colin Peterson of Minnesota, who won his race, would pick up to be the ranking member of the Agriculture Committee, and Louise Slaughter of New York would go to be the ranking person on the Rules Committee. Let's go next to Chatsworth, Georgia. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I was wanting to say something about the polls being wrong, it voting for Kerry when somebody's actually, it goes toward Bush. I do think that's wrong because I think that half of it was based on the economy and how people thought that George Bush could handle a war better than Kerry could. And I know I'm a Democrat, but that's what made me vote Republican. I think that the world is safer with George Bush. But also, it was based on morals, too, because, you know, I didn't do it, but you could do like a pro-con list, and it's the economy and then the morals. And still, either way, George Bush had it by both. And I think that that was the main thing for how everybody voted.
Thanks. Huma, Louisiana.
Good morning, Connie.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I haven't had any sleep.
You have a new senator?
Yes, we do. Vitter.
Mr. Vitter is one.
Republican.
Actually, there was some concern that there would be a runoff there, wasn't there?
Yes, and he won by 51%.
And President Bush won over Senator Kerry 57-42 in Louisiana.
Pretty close, don't you think?
How did you feel about that?
Oh, well, I voted for Kerry. And I really feel like, Louisiana's always red. And I just kind of want to say that too. I also want to congratulate Brian Lamb for the Paul Peck Award. I thought it was wonderful. I really did. I think so. Thank you for C-SPAN, because I want America to know, and I want all the world to know that listens to C-SPAN, that I've been watching C-SPAN for 25 years, and I feel like y'all the only ones I can count on to just be, let us voice our voices, and it's wonderful. That's the democracy.
Are you going to bed now?
No, I just want to tell you that that I did vote for Kerry, and it looks like Bush is going to win, and I just think it's the outcome was wonderful all across the nation, and I just want people to know that Louisiana is. It looks red all the time, but there are plenty people. It's split. It's almost like split. Like northern Louisiana is like Bible kind of, and southern Louisiana is really, believe it or not like that. So I kind of wanted you to y'all just think about that a little bit. And
thanks for watching.
Bless America, and God bless everybody.
Columbus, Ohio, Bush supporter.
Yes. This is Michelle Minnesfield. I was calling because I am a Democrat, but I happen to vote for Bush. I listened to several of the callers who stated that they were concerned about the religious part of it. I said we live in the United States, and regardless of Democrat or Republican, we have to vote who aligns themselves best with what we think America can be, and regardless. So I guess I called because I was a bit concerned that we are appearing to be so divided, but regardless, just based on my beliefs that we are Americans first, our political parties, our religious beliefs are all a part of that as well, but, we are unified in that respect.
That was Columbus, Ohio. Thanks for calling this morning. Now a look at some of the new House members.
In Colorado, in the 3rd District, John Salazar has won over Greg Walkert, and he will join his brother on Capitol Hill, Ken Salazar, who recently became the new senator for that state. In Missouri's 3rd, Russ Carnahan has defeated Bill Federer with 52% of the votes, and that's 100% of precincts reporting. Taking a look at Louisiana, Billy Tozan III is leading amongst the other two competitors in that race, though the Associated Press has not called that race. And in Pennsylvania, Allison Schwartz, the Democrat, has defeated Melissa Brown, the Republican, with 55% of the vote.
Thanks very much. We're going to go to this call, and I'm not sure exactly where you're calling from.
Chicago?
Chicago, good morning.
Hi. Well, I want to say that it looks like the states with the lowest levels of education and the highest levels of bankruptcy have chosen our president. And I love y'all, but I think you're a bunch of dumb, racist rednecks.
There was next is Blissfield, Michigan?
Yes.
What happened in Michigan?
I'm not exactly happy about it.
You're not?
I'm a Bush voter. My family went for Kerry. I'm back and forth on it. Morality did play a big issue for me. My family doesn't agree with that. My brother is in the military, and he cannot discuss on who he would have voted for, but I know deep down inside. And I don't appreciate these people saying rednecks, don't know anything. My family's from Kentucky. I'm glad that Bush won over in Kentucky. My own stepsister said gun-toting rednecks, this and that. But people need to realize if you vote opposite of your president right now, how are other countries going to look at you while you're in the state of war? People need to realize that.
Where is Blissfield?
Southeast Michigan.
Southeast Michigan. So Are your congressman is a Democrat or a Republican? Pardon?
Democrat.
Okay, and it's Congressman, is it Schwartz?
Yes.
Okay, and he won 58 to 36 pretty handily. Thank you. Wilmington, North Carolina, Kerry supporter.
Yeah.
North Carolina, I'm going to stop you right there and tell you that you're going to need to turn your television set down because I can tell we're going to get feedback.
Okay. It's down.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
I have a question for you about the provisional votes. How are they to determine the president if in my counting, they said they wouldn't be counting the provisional votes until next week.
Mm-hmm.
How will that affect everything? And how could they call it without the provisional votes being counted?
I am not any kind of expert on this, so I'm not sure, but I will ask our producers to double check, but I'm presuming it is if the number of provisional votes is less than the difference between the candidates. It wouldn't make any difference if they were all one way or the other. They could still call the state, but technically you're right.
Okay, and I do kind of have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what everybody's saying, I don't think that it's right that the Americans should be bashing each other because everybody is viewing things differently. To the point of there being two different parties because everybody does view things differently, and I feel like this is the time we should be coming together, not beating each other up because of that.
Thanks. In North Carolina, the Senate race there, Mr. Burr won over Erskine Bowles, 52 to 47%, so Senator Burr will be coming to Washington. And the governor's race, the Democrat won with 55%. So you have a flip there, the Republican in the Senate, the Democrat in the governorship, and President Bush won the state 56-43, it looks like.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next is Erie, Pennsylvania. Good morning, Erie.
Yes, good morning. I did vote for President Bush,
Mm-hmm.
and I just want to remind the American public that if you reflect back on this election, it goes all the way back to last year when there were 9 Democrat candidates, and all they did was get up on there instead of debating and identifying who they were and what they would do as president. They bashed President Bush on every question, on every issue, and that's all they kept saying. And yet, the American public came out and voted in record numbers, and the majority of the people voted for President Bush, and it's time to support him, and it's time to encourage him and say, let's get the job done for America no matter what side you're on.
So what do you think the president needs to do if he wins? What does he need to do to unite and bring in some of these people who are so upset this morning?
I think, first of all, that they have to realize that they're the ones that caused the division. I mean, if any one of those Democrats wants to sit back and look today, what can they tell me about Sharpton, Dean, Gephardt, Lieberman, Kucinich, or even Kerry that they didn't know 2 years ago? None of those people identified themselves to anything. They just identified themselves as Bush haters. And they have to put down the olive branch, too, and say, okay, we didn't like some of the things that got done the first time, but we believe that the American people supported us on these issues. We want you to look at them, President Bush. We want to have some compromises. And then President Bush has to sit down with them and say, yes, we'll compromise on some of these issues. But obviously, like the issue with same-sex marriage, every state that had it on the ballot voted it down, and now the Democrats need to realize that that is not a policy that the American people want. It was overwhelmingly voted down, and they need to take it out of their platform. And they need to get to the point where they say, yes, morality is still the number one issue in America. The war is number 2 issue, and the economy is number 3, and we all need to take steps to improve it. And we can't do it with false promises, and we all know that there was no way John Kerry could afford to all the programs he was promising. And that's with any candidate. And all the candidates have got to stop doing that.
Okay, thanks. We're going to leave it at that. We have a lot of people in line this morning. We're going to go to Texas next. Is it Kylene, Texas?
Yes, ma'am. Bye. Hello.
Texas, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm from Killeen, Texas. Killeen, Texas, home of Fort Hood. A lot of soldiers here. I voted for Kerry. And I'm really sorry that the U.S. have a president like Bush. We're going to suffer through a lot of things that's going to arise within a few years. And I think it's so when the gasoline prices start to raise to about $3 a gallon, you know, don't complain. The Republicans do not complain. We have a lot of soldiers who are hurting. Their families are hurting. And it's just really sad around here that we have to put up with all this again. My husband's a veteran, and it's just sad. And I'm sorry to see Florida. I have a home. My home is in Florida, and I'm sorry that, you know, we have the two Bushes again. But we have to live through this. We have to pray for this country. We have to pray for everybody in the world that everything will go okay for the next 4 years. And I think, ma'am, yes.
Do you have a new congressman?
Yes.
Do you know who it is?
I'm kind of nervous. I'm not sure right this second.
Okay.
But,
thanks for the call, Kylene, Texas. There are some new members of the House of Representatives from Texas because 4 Democratic congressmen were defeated from Texas. As you know, Texas went through the redistricting issue there. And I think, and I can have somebody check for me what the current number was, but I think it's something like 21-11 now in terms of the total, in terms of the Republicans to Democrats. But we'll check that out and we'll get back to you. Let's go and take a look at some of the Senate results, specifically from the southern part of the country.
In Louisiana, Senator John Breaux, the Democrat, is not seeking re-election. Representative, though, David Vitter has won election to the Senate with 51% of the vote, also over Representative Chris John. Looking to North Carolina, you'll know that this is Senator Edward's seat. Erskine Bowles was running against Richard Burr. Richard Burr won with 51% of the vote and 99% of precincts reporting. Looking to South Carolina, it's Jim DeMint over Inez Tenenbaum with 53% of the vote and 98% of precincts reporting. And in Florida, this race not called yet, but Mel Martinez leads over Betty Castor with 49% of the vote.
Also tell our viewers that if you're interested in getting the statistics from this and all of them, you can go to the same information that I'm using here this morning, and it's at www.cspan.org. And when you get there, you'll be able to click on this map, which will give you the red and blue states and the ones that haven't been called yet. But you'll also be able to go onto the map, touch a state, and be able to click down into it. You'll be able to get the Senate results, the House results, the governor's races, anything that you need or are interested in seeing. You can just see there what an example of all the information that will come down, the percentages, the raw numbers. All that is being provided to us by the Associated Press. And again, just go to our website. You can get the same information and the graphs that we're using here this morning to update our viewers. Mapleton, Georgia. Good morning, Mapleton.
Yes, I voted for Bush. And the reason that I voted for Bush is because he did give a plan. And he stated that no child left behind. Also, he stated on abortion and marriage between heterosexual. In the war, we need somebody that is not afraid of those folks and somebody that will stand up. We don't need nobody trying to compromise, but we need somebody to represent us. And that's what I expect out of Bush. And I stand behind him. I'm praying for him. And I believe in what he stands for.
Thanks. I promised you before that delegation makeup of the Texas delegation in the U.S. House of Representatives. The current situation was 16-16, evenly between the Republicans and the Democrats. The new makeup of the Texas delegation has 21 Republicans in it and 11 Democrats. Columbus, Ohio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
The comment I had to stand an hour in line for 4 hours just to vote, and they only had 3 polls, and it's like 5,000 people. Not only that, they made old folks and blind people stand in line.
So what did most of them stay and get to vote?
No, most of them left.
Did you leave?
No, I did not.
Why did you vote for Senator Kerry?
It's time for a change.
And if that doesn't happen, what will you do?
I'll have to go with Bush if he wins.
Will you accept him as the president?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Jacksonville, North Carolina, a Bush supporter.
Hello. I just wanted to say on a few notes that everyone's speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
I voted for Bush, and I feel like he is the president who's going to, he makes mistakes, We all do. Name one person who hasn't. But I feel in my heart that he is the one who's going to make the best decisions from here out for this country. And another issue about this being redneck, that's where we stand as a nation divided. We need to see people not for color, but for who they really are. And I am black, and I voted for Bush, so I'm not a redneck. And I feel in my heart that people need to look more than skin deep and reach really for the person and what they believe in. So I voted for Bush.
Thank you. Rockledge, Florida.
Is this Rockledge, Florida?
It's certainly.
Calling, I voted for Senator Kerry. I'm a little bit nervous, and the reason why I did is because I feel like Mr. Bush is incompetent. I was always taught to tell the truth. I was always taught when you go to school, you go to learn. I have books on Mr. Bush that I've read about his activities and his scrawling when he was in college and all the things he did. Now that he has been elected, I guess, I hope he raised the $200 billion for Iraq. I hope he increased the Social Security, cut the Social Security. I'm a little bit nervous, so you have to bear with me. I hope he increased the payments for Medicare, and I hope he increased the children in college for going to college, to give them a college break. And I hope he also keep the older people from getting their prescription. I hope this man will do all these things so these people see that his agenda is bad for the working man.
Can you tell us anything about your feelings on your Senate race?
Well, I voted for Castor.
You voted.
Mr. Bush was pushing for Martinez, and down here, I do not feel that this election was legitimate down here, because his brother been going around in the state of Florida guaranteeing that his brother was going to win. He said he will win. And when you don't have a paper trail, let me tell you something. I worked with money. I worked on my job. I always had to have a paper trail. Every morning I would go into the office with my boss and show him the money and the paper trail. You have to have a paper trail. And I thank you for letting me talk. You have a nice day.
You too. We're going to go to Arkansas next. Pocahontas, Arkansas.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is that?
My name is Patty McClellan.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say that I have been a Democrat ever since I registered to vote at 18 years of age. I voted Democrat this year, or I'm sorry, I am a Democrat, but I voted for Bush this year. The reason for my voting for Bush this year was because I had to look at both candidates and see which one believed the way I did and had the same morals as I did. I have both friends that are lesbian and gay. I'm a straight person, but I really feel that someone who is going against the Bible, which says one man, one woman, doesn't have the type of morals really to stand as a leader of my country, because I think other countries would look at that and see that he was weak. As far as Mr. Bush's past, Mr. Kerry, Mr. Bush, any president that comes in there is going to have a past, as do we all. As teenagers, we all explore different avenues, and we're going to have a past. It has to do with who we are at present day. I think that people are condemning Mr. Bush because of this war and everything, but Mr. Bush didn't do this war. These things were instigated and started before he came into presidency, as well as any president that comes in.
Okay, Arkansas, thank you. We'll let it go at that. Let's go to New York next. Clean New York.
Oh, yes. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Scott, the human Christian. I've first time voting, 42 years old. The only reason what got me off my butt is the last election. I did vote for Kerry. I wish I could get this across the air before the election, however. I'm a once-a-month caller, and I do not lie. My point is, out there is, and I'm nervous too because I only call once every 30 days.
Go ahead.
But my point is all of these Jews out there, I call it a Judaism because Christ in the New Testament never okayed the murder of your enemy, the murder of your child, the murder of a criminal. To be a Christian is to be Christ-like. So we have to look at the New Testament for examples of what Christ told us to do to live our life.
And how does that fit in with your vote for Senator Kerry?
Well, because George Bush said his hero is Christ. He wears his religion on his shoulder, and he does not agree with Christ. Christ said, love your enemy. If you are a true Christian, you are Christ-like.
Okay.
You do not go back to the Old Testament to go for eye for an eye. That is the Jewish religion. America is full of Crejudaism, which is a Creju.
Thank you. That was, I'm not sure if it was Olene or Clean. I can't really see that well this morning. Let me tell you just that in New York, Senator Schumer won handily 71% to 25% in the Senate race there in New York. And Senator Kerry took New York 58 to 40, and Ralph Nader got 2% in New York. But let's take a look at the complete electoral map so you can get an idea of what it looks like right now. There's this is as of the Associated Press calls, 254 electoral votes for President Bush, 252 for Senator Kerry, and there's still 32 out there in 3 states that the Associated Press has not called: Ohio, New Mexico, and Iowa. And we'll get more of that from Pedro Echeverria.
In Ohio, it's 136,221 votes that separate the two candidates for president, and that will take into account when provisional ballots are added into that figure what the end result will be. Looking at other areas of the country, New Mexico, the president has a 50% lead over John Kerry with a little over 333,000 votes, and that's 99% of precincts reporting there. In Iowa, the president also enjoying a lead of just over 50% over John Kerry. You'll see that Ralph Nader got a little over 5,700 votes. In Wisconsin, John Kerry is the winner there with just a little over 49% of the votes. Got about 1.4 million plus votes in Wisconsin. To Michigan, with 93% of precincts reporting John Kerry with 50% of the vote over the president. And looking at Florida, it's the president with 52% of the vote. The Associated Press has labeled that a win over John Kerry, who received 47% of the vote. And in Pennsylvania, with 99% of precincts reporting John Kerry with a 50% percentage of the vote taken in there over President Bush.
Our first call this morning from Alabama. Alabama, Senator Shelby, easily winning re-election there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Listen, I have to tell you that I woke up extremely scared yesterday morning that Kerry may actually possibly win. My husband is currently deployed right now. He won't be home till January. We are a military family living on a military installation, and I am embedded with other military families worried that we may have actually had a Democrat in office. Because of that, I have to say that I have woke up with a little bit more of a breath of fresh air this morning. I am extremely worried about our country. I feel that we all do need to pull together, be united, be thankful that we are Americans, that we actually do have a sort of a democratic process, if you may. I firmly believe that if, in fact, we were not in Iraq, that they would be here on our soil fighting. And I firmly believe that. And I did also vote for straight Republican down the way. My entire family's in Arizona. I was a little bit worried that may even go to the Democrats this year. I have to tell you, we live in a country where we all are very blessed to be Americans, and this is the land of the free. And we all live under the guise that a Democrat can come into office and make it all better. We don't need change right now with a new president. We need to support the president that we have. And I do thank you for your time this morning, and have a blessed day.
Hyattsville, Maryland.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. I am so disappointed. I voted for Kerry, and I'm with what Edward said when he came out last night, and he said that they're not going to concede until every vote is counted, and especially in Ohio. If people stood in line for more than 9 hours and they didn't get a chance to vote and they were waiting, I agree. You need to make sure that every vote is counted, and those people want their votes counted anytime you stand in a line that long.
How were the lines where you were?
I got to the polls in Maryland at 5 minutes to 7, and I believe I was done about 20 minutes to 8. So I waited in line about 40 minutes, I would say, and it was like 75 people in front of me at 5 minutes to 7. And, I mean, it was really crowded. I never in my life, I've been voting since I was 18, and I'm 52 now. And, I mean, I never in my life seen so many people in line waiting all across the country. You know, when I looked at television, I just saw people just coming out. And you know, and another thing I want to talk about, the moral issue. People should stop putting their trust in man. God is the person who's going to judge. Everybody who's jumping on this moral issue, God is the person who's going to be the judge. He seats higher than any man. So, people, I want you to listen, America. Don't be afraid thinking that if we elect a person who stand up for abortion, who stand up for gays issues and all of that, that we're going to be in trouble. No, God is the last person to judge everyone.
Thanks, Hyattsville, Maryland. And again, Maryland has re-elected its Senator Barbara Mikulski, and she got 65% of the vote over her opponent. Let's go next to Panama City, Florida.
Yes, I voted for Bush. This was my first time voting, and I believe that, I know for myself and what I believe for most Americans is most people don't follow politics until it's time to vote. And when it's election time, you know, they'll tell you what you want to hear. We know from the past that, you know, people will sit there and make all these promises, and then once they're in office, it's not necessarily what happens. My personal belief was that, well, my reason for voting for Bush was that right now, in a time of war, we need to stay strong. And that if we change our leader, it's going to show weakness to the rest of the world. And with everything that's gone on in the past few years, we definitely do not need to be showing weakness to anybody. We need to show the world that we're strong and that we stand behind our decisions, whether they're right or wrong.
Florida, thank you. And can I ask you, is there any new news about your Senate race?
Not yet. They still haven't tallied all the votes.
Okay. The last that the Associated Press has counted, 49% for Mel Martinez and 48% for Betsy Castor, the Democrat, and they have not called that yet. Let's go next to Newark, Delaware. Good morning, Delaware.
Good morning.
What happened in your state?
Well, I happen to vote for Kerry. I am a Democrat. I am a compassionate conservative, so Republicans don't have a road, the high road on that. I split my ticket. I happen to have voted for Castle, who is our one representative. So I don't necessarily believe that you have to toe the line with regard to strictly voting your party line.
And how did you vote for governor?
I voted for our governor, Ruth Ann Minner.
And she won 51% to 46%. What would you want to say this morning?
I just would like to say that this country is highly polarized, and it would be nice to see individuals stop bad-mouthing each other across the country with the redneck and everything. But the reason I called is because of the individual that called in from Indiana and saying Democrats do this and Democrats do that. He doesn't know me. I'm a Democrat. But what he was speaking at, and he generalized, saying that all Democrats are doing one thing. There are a lot of Democrats that voted for President Bush. I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe that Kerry would have been the correct person, but also, as I said, I voted for our Representative Castle, who's a Republican, because I think that he's going to do the right thing as well. And so I think that we need to start thinking about how we're going to be united as a country.
Thank you. Tulsa, Oklahoma's next. Good morning.
Yes, how are you this morning?
A Bush supporter. I'm fine.
Good. A couple of things real quick. Number one, I'd like to thank everybody in America, all the volunteers at the polling places, excuse me, all the people that work so hard to make this happen. I voted early, late last week, and then the lines were big here in Tulsa, and the people were so friendly and so helpful and so nice, and that shows me that despite what the jaded media thinks, people out in Central America and the heartland are good, common, decent people. Secondly, it's going to be fun, I think, to watch the media and how they handle this. I mean, I've been flipping around since 3 in the morning, and the sullen faces on people like Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings, Dan Rather, I'm sure Katie Curry. It's unbelievable that they can't accept this. And the way they portray this, all the excuse-making that's going to start, I think they've done as much or more than anybody or any politician to divide America, because we're not as stupid as what the elite media thinks. And thank goodness for the alternative forms of media, because now we get both sides of the story. But it's going to be comical watching these people and how they handle it.
Tulsa, can I ask you a question about the state?
You bet.
Well, I'm just curious because Oklahoma went for Bush, 66%, way over, and Mr. Coburn won the Senate race, the Republican, over Mr. Carson, 53-41, and then you have on the whole western part of the state, you have all Republican congressmen, and then there's this second district, Mr. Boren.
Right.
And he won, a Democrat, 65% of the vote on the eastern side. How's that happen?
Well, he's the son of David Boren, who used to be a senator here, I believe, and now is president of the University of Oklahoma. Dan Boren won, in my opinion, because of a popularity contest. You had former OU football coach Barry Switzer and some really significant people here in Oklahoma stumping for Boren because of his connections to his dad. I think it's a fluke. It was it was a popularity contest, plain and simple.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, let's take a look at the new Senate and House makeup. First of all, the Senate. Currently in the Senate, 51 Republicans, 48 Democrats, 1 independent. The new makeup of the Senate, 53 Republicans, 44 Democrats, and 1 independent. And, of course, then we're still waiting on Florida. Here are the names of some of the new senators, or returning senators, as you'll see. Richard Burr, a Republican from North Carolina. Tom Coburn, as we said, a Republican from Oklahoma. Jim DeMint, a Republican from South Carolina. Johnny Isakson, a Republican from Georgia. And next we have Barack Obama, a Democrat from Illinois. And another Democrat from Colorado, Ken Salazar, beating Mr. Coors. John Thune, the Republican from South Dakota, defeating the minority leader of the United States Senate, Tom Daschle. And finally, David Vitter, a Republican from Louisiana, and Mr. Vitter won over several other people. He needed 51% not to have he needed 50% not to have a runoff, and he got 51%. Let's go next to Panama City, Florida. Kerry supporter. Good morning.
How you doing?
Good.
My name's Matthew. I voted for Kerry, but Bush clearly won. I agree with the popularity vote, and I think they should make some kind of amendment to get rid of the electoral votes. Because had this been the switch situation in 2000 and we didn't have these electoral votes, Al Gore would be our president.
Okay. Thanks very much. Let's take a look at Senator Edwards last night as he came out in Boston to talk to supporters.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. It's been a long night, but we've waited 4 years for this victory. We can wait one more night. Tonight, John and I are so proud of all of you who are here with us and all of you across the country who have stood with us in this campaign. John Kerry and I made a promise to the American people that in this election, every vote would count and every vote would be counted. Tonight, we are keeping our word, and we will fight for every vote. You deserve no less. Thank you. Thank you.
Folks at the hotline told us this morning that there's scheduled to be a meeting of the Kerry campaign at 10 a.m. this morning. Others have said there might be a statement. We will just stand by and wait and see. Now, after Senator Edwards made that statement, Andrew Card came out and talked to the people there about 5:40 Eastern time this morning, and when that is ready, we will show that to you, too. We want to get that to you. It's Panama City, Florida. Good morning. Panama City's not there. Let's try Bethel, Connecticut.
Hi.
Hi, how are you this morning?
Good.
What happened in Connecticut?
Oh, it's looking good in Connecticut. But I tell you the truth, I'm not one of them that voted for Kerry and Edwards because I think Kerry and Edwards just don't get it. And by that I mean that we had 8 years of President Clinton, and his economic policies are what affected George Bush's last 4 years. Now with George Bush past this 4-year term, I think you'll see the road to recovery is what's happening now. And I think we're going to see after this 4 years that America's going to improve a whole lot.
And who do you think would be the candidate for the Republicans and Democrats in 2008?
You know, that's a good question, and I really would want to examine that a lot further. But to be honest with you, I think now our focus has to be on the present and not on the future.
And how do you think the president should reach out to Democrats if he wins today to try to unite the country?
Well, I don't think the president should be the one to, so to speak, reach out to the Democrats. I think the Democrats should realize that, okay, look, your policies and your plans just don't work. Now listen to what America is saying, not what the president is saying, what America is saying and what President Bush is reiterating that America is saying.
Isn't that kind of like beating them over the head with a stick?
If that's what it takes to wake up the Democrats, then maybe that's what they need is a big stick right across the side of the head.
In Connecticut, Senator Dodd won re-election quite handily with 66% of the vote. There was no governor's race there. Senator Kerry won Connecticut over President Bush 54% to 44%. It's Pleasant, Michigan. Good morning, Pleasant.
Oh.
You're on the air, Michigan. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi. This is my first year voting. I just turned 18 in August, so I was really excited.
What was the experience like for you?
Well, I'm at college, so I had to do it through an absentee ballot. But all of my roommates did the same thing, so it was a little bit easier. And I felt so empowered. I felt like, my opinion was really going to count this year because it's such an important election year. And I voted for Kerry, and I'm very confident in my vote. I mean, the biggest issue for me was abortion rights because as a woman, I'm not willing to give up my rights to my own body. So that was a big influence.
And what if you had the opportunity again? Would you choose Democrat over Republican? Is that generally the way you lead?
Well, I mostly identify myself as a liberal. I don't like to put labels on myself. But I don't know. My ideas don't really fit, a certain mold. I guess it'll come with age.
What are you studying in school?
Theater.
Thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Norman, Oklahoma.
Yes.
Hi, Norman.
Hi. I'm here.
You're on the air.
All right. I just wanted to say I'm registered as an independent. I'm retired from the Army, and I've noticed in our Army Times statistics show that 73% of the military favored Bush. And I've heard all of the talks about the redneck, and the Democrats need to reach out to the Republicans. The Democrats and Republicans need to reach out to each other. We need to get beyond calling each other names. And I feel like the older people need to stop the hate teaching of our younger people, like the one young man that got on earlier, he made reference to the devil knowing, excuse me, I've got a cold. He made reference to the devil knowing more about the Bible than Christians, which that may be true, but we have people teaching hate, and that needs to stop. The older people need to be responsible for teaching the younger people. Democrats and Republicans need to reach out. We need to accept the outcome of the election. We need to get beyond it. And I also want to say it seems to me that the Democrats play more politics than the Republicans. That's why I voted a straight Republican ticket this year.
That was Norman, Oklahoma. Thanks. As promised, here is White House Chief of Staff Andrew Card from about 5:40 Eastern Time this morning at the Ronald Reagan Building in Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for staying up so late with us, and good morning. I'm Andy Card. I'm President Bush's Chief of Staff. We are convinced that President Bush has won re-election with at least 286 Electoral College votes. And he also had a margin of more than 3.5 million popular votes. President Bush's decisive margin of victory makes this the first presidential election since 1988 in which the winner received a majority of the popular vote. And in this election, President Bush received more votes than any presidential candidate in our country's history. Republicans also scored other great victories in this election. We won important victories adding to our majority in the House and adding to our majority in the Senate. In Ohio, President Bush has a lead of at least 140,000 votes. The Secretary of State's office has informed us that this margin is statistically insurmountable, even after the provisional ballots are considered. So President Bush has won the state of Ohio. President Bush has also been declared the winner in Nevada. The other victories that he has had will be added with the strong showing of margins that we are looking at in Iowa and New Mexico, and we're also going to put those states in the winners column as well. This all adds up to a convincing Electoral College victory, as well as a strong endorsement of President Bush by his fellow Americans in the popular vote. President Bush decided to give Senator Kerry the respect of more time to reflect on the results of this election. The President will be making a statement later today. Again, I thank all of you who stayed up these many hours waiting for the opportunity to celebrate this victory. And I also thank all of the volunteers all across this great country that work so hard. But most importantly, I thank the many voters who participated in this important election. It was a great celebration of our democracy. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Andrew Card from about 3 hours ago, the very early morning in Washington, when people were still waiting for the possibility of President Bush maybe coming over to the Ronald Reagan building, which is right next to the White House, with some information. But as you can see after this, that they left. Now, what Mr. Card say is not meshing necessarily with what the Associated Press and official votes are. There are still outstanding Ohio, New Mexico, and Iowa. Also, we'd let you know throughout this morning we'll be letting you know a little bit about what happened to the leadership in the House and the Senate. The Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, it represents the 14th District of Illinois, and he won his seat for re-election, 68% of the vote to 32% for his opponent. Back to the phones. Toledo, Ohio. Good morning. Toledo, go ahead. Helps if I push the button. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi. I have to say this election, I found it to be extremely upsetting and divisive. A friend of mine's a school teacher, and in the last 2 weeks, they've heard of 5 different churches in town that were all saying that you had to vote for God and for Bush and issue 1, for your soul. And, I hear these things, and it's just, it's scary that, that can happen. I mean, everybody has the right to believe in God and their their values, and they need to vote on them, but I don't think the preacher needs to be standing up there and and telling them what it is.
Do you think that this vote in Ohio being so close and so many people turning out will have an impact on the state's politics in the future?
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, which way it's going to go, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly the effect is going to be. That it's just it's hard to fathom. Is it going to go? Are they going to stick with the Republicans are going to stick with the same line, and it's going to get harsher and harsher? That the Democrats are anti-God, and and that's just very scary that somebody sits out and just declares, all voting for a Democrat, a vote against God. It's just I find it extremely disturbing.
One final question, Toledo. Have you heard anything this morning about what the Secretary of State there is planning on doing? Is he going to make a statement or anything?
He made a statement earlier this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and they hadn't indicated that they were going to make any after that. I know that it's 11 days until they're going to count the provisional ballots. When I went to vote yesterday morning, and there was nothing going on. But when I went, and I went with my mom in the afternoon to
Mm-hmm.
show her where it was, and there were people running around all over the place because people had been getting turned away from casting their provisional ballots, and the area Toledo that I live in is strongly Democratic, and I'm not saying anybody was necessarily playing games. It's just that the vote is so important. We really need to find ways to get it completely straight so that there just aren't any questions for either side, so everybody feels confident when when all is said and done that it's correct. Because it just any impression of impropriety is just becoming more and more disturbing, especially when things are coming out this close every time.
Thanks, Toledo, Ohio. We're going to go to Michigan next. Michigan went for Senator Kerry, 51% to 48%. Benton, Michigan. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Botner, and I grew up a Democrat, and many of my family were Democrats and ran for political offices. My parents were quite active in the Democrat political races. Neighbors were politicians, Democrat. And when I became an 18-year-old, I joined the Republicans. I vote my choice based on the person.
Mm-hmm.
I do not make an uninformed vote. And what I mean by informed is I read all sources available to me. I find newspapers to be extremely, in Michigan, very biased to a liberal viewpoint, although there are some that you can find that are more conservative. It's not just whether it's a conservative or liberal issue. It happens to be with what's necessary for the better of the people. What I get in Michigan is that people are starting to realize that we need to bring back understanding, morals, and to stop following what someone else tells you to do.
Okay, Michigan, I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks very much. If you're getting up this morning and want to know where you can go to get all the information across the country, your best bet is just to go to our website. It's www.cspan.org, and you'll see right in the middle of there that you can get the electoral page with the electoral map that you see there on your screen and the 3 states that are still outstanding. But you can also go into the results category, and in the results category you can find every congressional race in the country, where it's at right now, how many reporting, what the percentage was, and in most of them you can also find out what the total numbers of votes were. That might be helpful for you. Again, www.cspan.org, everything across the country in presidential races, senatorial, congressional, and gubernatorial, if you would like to do that. Now, let's go to the hotline. An update this morning from Chuck Todd. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, Connie.
What's going on?
Well, believe it or not, it's less than 1,500 days until Election Day 2008. And why do I bring that up? Because this morning we get an interesting press release from the Senate Majority Leader, Bill Frist. Of course, 2008 now, is, assuming President Bush holds on there in Ohio, is going to be an open presidential race on both sides. I mean, a gigantic battle royale, no heir apparent among the Republicans. Bill Frist, if anybody, is trying to position himself, and it's very interesting this morning. He announced a fly-around tour. He's going to stop in 4 of the states that the Republican Senate Committee picked up: North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Frist, and Frist in Florida. It's been a long night, and campaign with all of them, hold a victory rally with all 4 of them. What's interesting about this is that George Allen, who's chairman of the NRSC, is also somebody who's interested in running for president in 2008, and one would wonder if he would like to take a little bit of credit for being the guy who steered the campaign committee into picking up more seats this cycle, for instance, than when Bill Frist led the Senate committee in 2002. But Frist doing what he can to get a little more of the credit this morning and be the first guy that thanks these new senators. You know, Mel Martinez is going to become a favored senator among Republican presidential candidates because they're going to want the endorsement of somebody in that big key state. So,
are they going to be able to include Martinez? I mean, has that been announced yet?
That hasn't been announced, but it's our understanding that in about an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, Betty Castor is going to make some sort of an announcement. We have yet to hear about these potential absentee ballots that we had been hearing about that are might be down there in Florida, might be enough to, 80,000 votes is a lot to overcome. But if there are 250,000 absentee votes floating around South Florida, maybe it's possible. But, we haven't heard much about that as of yet.
How about Ohio?
With Ohio, well, we're waiting on, a lot of people are wondering what John Kerry's going to say this morning. When they made the announcement that they were going to wait for every vote to count, and that they believed that the provisional ballots were going to be enough to put them over the top, that was when Cuyahoga County had a lot more vote to be counted, and the expectation was that the vote gap between Bush and Kerry was going to close to less than 100,000. It ended up expanding. Bush's lead is 140,000. A lot of Kerry people realize that suddenly there may not be enough provisional ballots. So a lot of speculation about what is John Kerry going to say when he decides to make a statement sometime this morning. And that's something we're waiting on before anything from the Ohio Secretary of State's office. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to show our viewers that we have the results specifically for Cuyahoga County. And it came out 66% to 33%.
So, yeah, it was always going to be a big Democratic county.
Right, but it really went more.
But what they needed was even more of a vote to come out of it, and I think I guess they didn't. They thought it was going to shrink the Bush lead more than it actually did. A couple other things to keep an eye on in the next couple of days is the Senate Democratic Caucus has to elect a new leader. The assumption has been that Harry Reid would be sort of an automatic. He's the Senate Democratic whip for the caucus, and he's been already making calls. We've already heard that he's made calls to certain liberal senators because he is a pro-life, a little more on the conservative side. And it'll be interesting to see if a liberal senator or somebody from more of the from the left wing of the party, maybe a Dick Durbin from Illinois or Chris Dodd, who lost by 1 vote to Tom Daschle the last time there was a leadership battle for the head of the Senate Democratic Caucus, will jump into this thing. A lot of speculation is that Harry Reid's not going to have a free ride, particularly since Senate Democrats took such a bath last night. I mean, that was a big loss to basically for all of those 5 Southern seats to get swept. And finally, we want to point out one little thing for those wondering about that Colorado ballot initiative. Of course, I'm sure most viewers know it didn't pass anyway. That would have split the electoral votes. But even if it passed and Bush carried Ohio and gets credit for carrying Ohio, but nothing else, losing 4 electoral votes would have still kept Bush at 270 electoral votes, Kerry at 268, and Bush would still be president.
Any news from the Washington governor's race?
Nothing yet. Single digit. Rossi with a very narrow lead. But Washington does, I think it's up to 60% of their vote is by mail. Washington has a history. If you guys recall, Maria Cantwell Slade Gorton in the 2000 Senate race, that took about 2 weeks before we get the final vote in. You'd see 99% reporting, and then all of a sudden you kept hearing about more and more ballots to be counted. Don't be surprised if this takes days, not hours.
Thanks very much for joining us.
You got it.
We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Now let's take a look at Texas and what's been happening with the redistricting there and how that is going to change the makeup of the United States House of Representatives.
Going into Election Day, the redistricting effort, you had 16 Republicans and 16 Democrats in the House delegation out of Texas. As of today, 21 Republicans now and 11 Democrats. Looking at specific races, specifically at the 17th race or the 19th race actually, between Andy Neuberger and Charlie Stenholm. Mr. Neuberger won with 58% of the vote. And looking at the 32nd district race in Texas, Pete Sessions wins over Martin Frost with 54% of the vote.
We mentioned earlier about Tom Daschle, and Chuck Todd talked about Harry Reid, who is up for re-election, but also the Democratic Policy Committee Chairman Byron Dorgan was up for re-election, a Democrat from North Dakota, and he won re-election. We're going to get back to your phones now. Lorraine, Ohio. Good morning. Go ahead, Lorraine.
Good morning. The reason I'm calling is because I voted for Kerry, and the people in Ohio don't realize what happened when they all basically voted for Bush, because it's almost a given that Bush has won Ohio. We have lost over 250,000 jobs in Ohio while Bush has been president, and we have only gained a little over 5,000 jobs, and Bush says that we're making great progress. I don't understand how we're making great progress if we've not even got a quarter of our jobs back.
Lorraine, let me ask you, if indeed President Bush does win re-election, what do you want him to do first?
Oh, I want him to give us our jobs back.
And how does he do that?
Quit sending them overseas. And, I mean, we're going to be losing Ford here in 2005. That's a couple 100,000 jobs that we're going to be losing yet again.
Is that right in Lorain?
Yes, it is in Lorain.
Mm-hmm.
My husband worked for a big company here in Lorain also, and his job was shipped overseas. He was making $19 an hour, and we're now down to $10 an hour with 3 kids, and we can't make it. We were put on welfare, and they have kicked us off now because there's not enough funding or whatever. I don't know what to understand about this, but what are we supposed to do? You know, I mean, I feel really, really bad for Kerry right now. I hope that he runs again in 2008 because he'll have my support yet again.
Thank you very much, Ohio. Appreciate your call this morning. We go to King George, Virginia next. Good morning, King George.
Good morning, Connie. How are you?
I'm good. Where is that?
I'm sorry?
Where is King George?
King George County is right, it's not that far from D.C. and about an hour from Richmond.
Okay, so
toward the east.
Over toward the east. But you have a Republican member of Congress?
We have Joanne Davis in the House of Representatives. I believe she made it again. We only had one independent, and that was William Lee. that she was against. So I believe she's probably back in, but I haven't been able to hear anything
Actually, she won by 80% of the vote.
I wouldn't doubt it.
80 to 20%. Go ahead with your...
Though, because she's she's a realtor, and that worries me because I'm very much about, the environment and the trees and such. But that's not what I called about.
What would you like to talk about?
I called because I have two fathers who lie in Arlington National Cemetery. I have a mother who's on total disability down in Virginia Beach. She's raised 7 children by herself after my stepfather died. We were raised Navy. I was born in Norfolk, Virginia, Navy family. Lost my father at an early age when he was on a cruise in Turkey. Each one of my fathers, if they were alive today, would be standing right there for George Bush. And that's what we've done. You've noticed that most of the military has been behind him. It's not about us anymore. It's not about what we get, our tax breaks, what we have, our prescriptions. Sometimes we have to make a sacrifice, too. I know that George has not had the most wonderful presidency these last 4 years. It can't be easy for him. So I give the man a lot of credit for not backing out and saying let somebody else have this job. This stinks. He is a prime target. He's put himself right back into the line of fire. And I truly believe that the great turnout yesterday was because we knew we had to battle for our president like he's battled for us. We know he's been honest with us. We know. I listen to talk radio. I read everything I can read. I watch television. I'm informed. And I know Kerry's a good man, too. But he hasn't got a clue. And I know Osama bin Laden is not a happy man right now.
Thanks for your call, Virginia. Let's go to Rosendale, New York, a Kerry supporter.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Go ahead.
I'm actually registered as an independent. I think the two-party system is somewhat of a scam, and I voted for Kerry really as the lesser of two evils, as cynical as that sounds. But I just wanted to address I consider myself a religious person, and I'm baffled by the virtue that the religious right sees in George Bush. I just don't see the virtue in this man. He lied to us. He's killing innocent people. Iraq is a disaster. I think that the Bush camp has grossly distorted Kerry's opinions about the effort in Iraq. I think as a former military man, Kerry certainly understands the necessity of being strong in a strong effort, but I think Kerry also understands that we live in the world and we have to cooperate with the world in some way, and that an aggressive, misplaced military solution is only making more enemies. I think we are less safe now than we were before because of the disaster in Iraq. We are breeding Islamic terrorists because of this effort. And I'd like to also point people's attention to the European Union, which I think is currently in the world one of the best examples of an effort, perhaps flawed, perhaps difficult, but at least an effort to forge some sort of non-military solution to community problems. And I think it's no coincidence that they've arrested and convicted more members of Al-Qaeda in Europe than anywhere else in the world. And I'd also like to protest the fact that the environment was not really addressed in this election at all. And George Bush, as I understand it, has the worst environmental record of any American president. So
Thank you. That was New York. We go next to St. Louis. Hi, St. Louis.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
It's ironic the previous caller makes my point. I'm a youth minister in the Midwest, and I am, quite frankly, sick and tired as an evangelical Christian of being the only group left in America that you can discriminate against. The very first calls you started getting when I started watching this morning was blaming the preachers for preaching hate and all that other stuff. I didn't tell one person how to vote, but to say that my vote doesn't count because I vote based on my convictions, which are influenced by my religion, to me is a slap in the face, because we applaud in America, the left applauds women's choice and their conviction to vote that way. And yet my choice to vote my conviction based on my beliefs about abortion and other issues are attacked and belittled. I have teenagers in public schools here in St. Louis who are ridiculed and discriminated against because, for one reason only, they're evangelical Christians, and it happens all the time. And right out of the gate, first thing, people are pointing to the preachers and the evangelical Christians and saying, oh, we shouldn't be voting our conscience. It's just absurd.
St. Louis, can I ask you a question? If this is an unfair rap that the evangelical Christians are getting. What do you think that President Bush, if he wins and it's announced today, what do you think, what kind of olive branch can he give out to the Kerry supporters to try to bridge that gap that we seem to have now when it comes to moral issues and religious issues?
Bottom line is, see, you, like I think everybody else, is missing the point. When you look at all the ban on gay marriage initiatives in the country, all 11 went down.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is pointing in this election to what has always been known about America, that there are more conservatives than liberals. Bush doesn't have to compromise anything.
I guess I wasn't asking for a compromise. I'm more talking about just an issue of not being so divided on this issue.
Well, he didn't make it a point. Everybody else pointed to his faith and ridiculed his faith and made it an issue. He didn't. He's never stood up and say, I'm God's man for the job. He just said, in my personal life, this is what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And in every interview I saw, he was very diligent about giving respect to all religions. And yet people wanted to laud him and attack him because he's an evangelical Christian. It's discrimination, period.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate your point of view in that. We go to Taipei, Taiwan next. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Charlie Pagley, and I was undecided in the election. I am a registered Republican. I ended up voting for Kerry in the end because living overseas, it is, I guess, I'm directly exposed to the kind of sentiment that the rest of the world has towards George Bush and his policy in Iraq.
Give me an example of that.
Well, I've lived overseas for probably 15 years, and one of the things that I've repeatedly heard is heard the United States referred to as the world police, and we get this kind of acronym during the first war in Iraq, and then in the latest war in Iraq. But this time it's been even more outstanding because we went in there really alone. Last week I was having dinner with 12 Iranians, and being the only American in the group was a very interesting experience for me. And it was, they were very friendly, but they really weren't extremely happy with George Bush knocking on their door, so to speak, in the Iraq War.
And finally, can I just ask you about your experience with the absentee ballot? Any problem?
No. Actually, there are people. I've been to a couple of community mixers and business meetings and stuff like that, and there are people over here in Asia, just like you'd go to a party in the United States and somebody would be signing up people.
Mm-hmm.
There are the same people over here in Asia doing drives to get people to register to vote. And I've been registered to vote in the state of Maryland for 20 years, and that's where I vote. And so I just mail it in.
What time is it there?
It's 9:52 in the evening.
So have you seen any difference, any newspaper articles or anything with reaction yet there?
You mean here in Taiwan?
Yes.
When we woke up this morning, it was Bush was ahead by I think it was 254, and or towards the middle of the day, the Taiwanese radio station that I was leaving to saying that Bush was ahead 254 and to Kerry's 238.
Thanks a lot. Are you watching us on the web?
I'm watching you via your internet broadcast. Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. We're going to next take a look at some Senate races. In the Senate, the Republican makeup of the Senate right now is 53 to 44. Some races still outstanding. Let's take a look at the competitive ones, or the ones that we thought would be competitive.
In a contest between Representative John Thune and Senate Minority Leader Tom Daschle, it is Mr. Thune who came out on top with over 50% of the vote coming in, and he wins election. He can conceded a victory this morning, or claimed victory this morning. The Senate Minority Leader expected to make a statement later today. No winner yet in the three-way race in Alaska. Lisa Murkowski leading, though, with 49% of the vote over Tony Knowles. Looking at Florida, no contested winner there, or no winner there yet. Mel Martinez leading over Betty Castor with 49% of the vote. And as we look towards Kentucky, Jim Bunning did win over Daniel Monjardo with 50.6% of the vote, and that was with most all precincts coming in. And looking at Colorado, it is Ken Salazar, the Democrat, defeating Pete Coors, the Republican. Mr. Salazar got 50% of the vote.
Next we go to Bernie, Missouri.
Hello.
Is it Bern, Missouri, or Bernie?
Bernie.
Go ahead.
I voted for Bush, and I'm one of your younger, older generation. And the reason I voted for Bush is because I have watched everything on CSPAN and everything that has gone on in this election, and I think most of his calls were right on. Yes, and Iraq is a very important part of what Bush is doing right now, because I'm Christian, and because of biblical standards, I understand why we as America had to go to Iraq after 9/11. And I just want to say that I lost my job, but I lost my job in the early 90s, and the Democrats were in office. And I am a Democrat, but I voted a split ticket. So I want the whole wide world that's listening to understand that sometimes things happen and we don't understand them.
Who did you vote for in your Senate race?
In my Senate race,
Chris Bond.
Oh, yes, Christopher Kit Bond, that's right.
And did you vote for him?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Thanks very much for your call. Let's go to Big Rapids, Michigan.
Yes, my name is Robin Southern, and this is only the second time that I've ever voted, and I'm not really a political person. I'm 26 years old, and I have 3 children. I voted for Kerry, but I would like to speak on Bush's behalf, and I would like to say in his position, I think he's doing a great job. The only reason why I voted for Kerry is just for the killing to stop. You know, it's just so sad. You know, that's the only reason why I voted for Kerry. But
you mean in Iraq?
Yes. I think under the circumstances, Bush has really prevailed and has shown everybody that he's not just going to sit around and take it lying down, that he is willing to protect America. And I just don't think that Kerry would have stepped up as strong as Bush did. Like I said, I did vote for Kerry, but I think under the circumstances, Kerry would not have been able to do what Bush is doing right now.
Thanks. Hibbing, Minnesota. Hello.
Hi. I just have some comments to make here. And, John Kerry, Senator Kerry, should do the right thing today and concede the election. I mean, we can't afford to have this continue on, for weeks and weeks like the 2000 election. I mean, President Bush obviously won the popular vote so far. I mean, all the votes haven't been counted yet, but it looks like it's going to lean that way. And, I mean, this has to stop, and we have to move on here. And the Democrats have to accept, even the media has to accept, the media likes to have the Democrat win, and the media has to accept, and all the people have to accept that President Bush has won, and it's time to move on to the next 4 years.
Okay, thanks. There's some editorials this morning that were written not knowing who would be ahead in the race at this point in time. I don't have the actual paper, but I do have the website edition of the New York Times and their lead editorial today. They say if he is going, he meaning whoever, meaning Kerry or Bush, is going to succeed at achieving anything of substance, the next president will have to help the nation reach some new place where elected officials expect that rewards can be won from cooperation and mutual respect. Right now, we are in a peculiar position of suffering political paralysis, despite the fact that there is a clear consensus on most questions of policy. And further down, they say this: the next chief executive will also have to reckon with the failure of both parties this year to prepare the American people for bad news or common sacrifice. Let's go to Loveland, Colorado next. Hello. Let me punch the button here. Hi, Loveland.
About the woman from Virginia who called earlier and that voted for Bush.
that said that we need to make sacrifices. First of all, I have individual health insurance. I can't even get diagnosed whether or not I have fibromyalgia or MS, because if I get diagnosed, I will never get health insurance again. And if she wants to know about sacrifice, I'm living at home, sharing a house with my mom, because what I'm paying out in individual health insurance, because Bush doesn't take a stand on health care, is enough for a mortgage payment. And I do believe in God for the people that believe that Democrats do not believe in God. Maybe they need to look more at themselves, because they can be the worst hypocrites that ever have been. And I think that people really need to look hard at this presidential race. It was time for a change. We've seen 4 years of what Bush has not done for the country. Why not give Kerry the next 4 years and see what he will do for the country? People have blasted the Clintons. They've blasted Hillary. Why don't they get off of it and get ready for a change? Maybe it is time for a change in this country. I've had enough of paying high health care. Is that woman telling me that I'm supposed to sacrifice my health? I am not supposed to be able to have the American dream that people have had years before me because I need to be able to sacrifice my health care? It's ridiculous.
Loveland, Colorado, thank you for the call this morning. Well, as you know, Senator Daschle lost his race to John Thune yesterday, so he will no longer be in the Senate, nor will he be, obviously, Minority Leader of the U.S. Senate. At 11:30 Eastern Time this morning, he is scheduled to have a news conference in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so that will be coming up. We don't know yet about what's going to be happening with President Bush or Senator Kerry, although we had heard earlier that there was a 10 a.m. meeting Eastern Time planned in Boston. Also, the Congressional Black Caucus is going to hold a post-election news conference at 10:30 this morning, in about an hour and a half, in the Radio Television Gallery, which is right inside the U.S. Capitol. And we hope to have that live on one of our networks, so keep watching for that, and we'll get a better idea of how the African-American breakdown occurred in congressional races across the country. And I'm sure there'll be a discussion also about the new senator-elect from Illinois. Well, in about 6 minutes or so, we're going to have two guests out here. We're going to spend an hour of our day today looking specifically at the congressional races. So that will be coming up. But first, we want to show you, in case you missed it, what Senator Edwards had to say in the middle of the night as he came out in Boston to talk about the current state of what was going on then, and then what happened about 5:40 Eastern Time this morning when Chief of Staff Andrew Card came out at the Reagan Building in Washington, D.C. on behalf of President Bush.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. It's been a long night, but we've waited 4 years for this victory. We can wait one more night. Tonight, John and I are so proud of all of you who are here with us and all of you across the country who have stood with us in this campaign. John Kerry and I made a promise to the American people that in this election, every vote would count and every vote would be counted. Tonight, we are keeping our word and we will fight for every vote. You deserve no less. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for staying up so late with us, and good morning. I'm Andy Card. I'm President Bush's Chief of Staff. We are convinced that President Bush has won re-election with at least 286 Electoral College votes. And he also had a margin of more than 3.5 million popular votes. President Bush's decisive margin of victory makes this the first presidential election since 1988 in which the winner received a majority of the popular vote. And in this election, President Bush received more votes than any presidential candidate in our country's history. Republicans also scored other great victories in this election. We won important victories adding to our majority in the House and adding to our majority in the Senate. In Ohio, President Bush has a lead of at least 140,000 votes. The Secretary of State's office has informed us that this margin is statistically insurmountable, even after the provisional ballots are considered. So President Bush has won the state of Ohio. President Bush has also been declared the winner in Nevada. The other victories that he has had will be added with the strong showing of margins that we are looking at in Iowa and New Mexico, and we're also going to put those states in the winners column as well. This all adds up to a convincing Electoral College victory, as well as a strong endorsement of President Bush by his fellow Americans in the popular vote. President Bush decided to give Senator Kerry the respect of more time to reflect on the results of this election. The President will be making a statement later today. Again, I thank all of you who stayed up these many hours waiting for the opportunity to celebrate this victory. And I also thank all of the volunteers all across this great country that work so hard. But most importantly, I thank the many voters who participated in this important election. It was a great celebration of our democracy. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.
Andy Card from earlier this morning, about 5:40 Eastern Time. In this next hour, we're going to spend a time looking specifically at the House and the Senate, its makeup, what things have changed. Let me show you what the current makeup of the United States Senate is.